if you've been on Twitter at all, you've seen everyone saying 2025 is the year of the AI agent. So me and Terry thought it'd be a good idea to rank all the different frameworks that are out there. And I'm actually on the founding team of an AI research startup who were behind the first multi-agent system framework. So I'm quite familiar with this topic. And basically, before we do jump in, we're going to give it a little bit of context around multi-agent systems. So if you're very familiar with them, you can skip to the rankings at this timestamp here. So let's start with, okay, what is a single agent? Maybe Terry, you can jump in here.
So the way that I like to define agent, it's obviously become a very ephemeral term lately, is a machine that can actually execute tasks. So if you think of an LLM like ChatGPT, if you ask it who is the president, it'll give you an answer. But if you ask it to book you a trip to go visit the White House, it can't do that for you. It can do all the research around that trip, but it can't actually take any action to help you book the trip. So when I think of an agent, I think of an LLM that can actually take action. That is how I would define it.
And basically, just to add on to what Terry said, so an agent can be more than just a LLM. You can add things like tools, you can add memory, you can add different types of responses. And this is the ecosystem post that I'm looking at from Camel. And you can just see like they're really, really customizable to fit different roles. And where I think agents get really, really interesting is where you start to have multi-agents. So you can customize agents for individual use cases. So you make them smarter with all these things I said before, but then you can put them in different ways to make them for different use cases. And this is kind of what I want to get at in this video. There isn't any right or wrong multi-agent system framework. They've kind of got different pros and cons for different use cases. Even within themselves, they've got different structures that are going to work better for different things. So this is an example here. So you can have two agents together, which should be something like role-playing. So this would be where you ask an agent a question, and then it clarifies that question, and then it gets two other agents to go back and forth and discuss that question. So this would be good for something like data generation, where you need like a constant iterate feedback from two different agents. And basically, as you can see from this example here, a good use case for this could be something like building a game. So the user asks a game, then the task agent classifies the game, and then from here, the AI user and the AI assistant go back and forth. Okay, one of them is a developer, one of them is classifying. How do we do the map? How do we design the characters? Blah, 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 back and forth, back and forth. But to take this one step further, some of the multi-agent system frameworks have it so it's a little bit more autonomous. So basically, this is something called workforce. And this is where a user can ask a question to something called a coordinator agent. So for example, make me content for my social media. And you'd have different agents here which have different roles, different tools, memories, and what I said before about customizing it. And the coordinator agent would decide, okay, how do we distribute this task to different agents to achieve the goal? And yeah, so I think that's kind of a good jumping off point to kind of keep our minds open when ranking these multi-agent system frameworks.
The first agentic framework we're going to be talking about today is called CrewAI. And CrewAI is going to be an agentic framework that really excels in building teams that have specific roles and tasks, as well as scaling up to a production level. So when we talk about some of the examples that CrewAI can work with, you've got things like marketing strategy. You've also got things like creating a job posting. But in addition to that, they've got a variety of different examples on their GitHub where you can see they have everything from a game builder crew to a markdown validator. And they even have something that helps you craft an Instagram post. So if we go in here and we actually take a look at the different agents, you see we've got our product analysis, competitor analysis, all the way down to the photo reviewing agent. So all of those agents are going to work in collaboration or in a crew, if you will, to give you your Instagram post when you're finished.
So basically, one of our viewers suggested that we do have some biases and it'd be good to have a AI come up with some sort of system to rank these. And I fully agree. Thank you for that idea. Basically, we asked ChatGPT to rank on performance, customization, and developer experience. It gave CrewAI a 9 out of 10 for performance, an 8 out of 10 for customization, and a 7 out of 10 for developer experience. As for this in general, I say the only one I kind of disagree with is probably developer experience, because I would give it a 10. I would say out of all the frameworks, it's very, very easy to get started. Let's move on to the next one.
So the next framework we're going to talk about today is called AutoGen. This is a framework that actually comes from Microsoft, and it's once again a multi-agent conversation framework. Where AutoGen really excels, in my opinion, is automation. It can really automate your entire process from end to end. And of course, since it's backed by Microsoft, it's going to have good performance in enterprise situations. So if you take a look at the examples that AutoGen has on their website, you can start to already see the difference between the frameworks. Whereas for CrewAI, their examples were things like make an Instagram post or start a job ad campaign. Here we have using Retrieve Chat for RAG code generation and question answering. And you'll notice that usually these applications are going to be much more technical and much more autonomous, but also require a little bit higher of a learning curve. So you can see here, for example, you can generate code based off of doc strings without human feedback, with human feedback. And one of the things that I think is really cool that AutoGen can do is retrieve chat to answer multi-hop questions from the 2Wiki multi-hop Q&A dataset. So for example, you could have a prompt that says your retrieve augmented chatbot, and you can answer the questions based on your own knowledge and the context provided by the user. And what you'll see here is some step-by-step thinking along with some documents to give a final result based off of all the information that was not only in the model, but also the context that was provided. And you've got this ROG proxy talking to the assistant.
Yeah, so going over to ranking it, our GPT judge gives it a performance 8 out of 10, customization 9 out of 10, developer experience 8 out of 10. And just because of the recent news about the framework kind of splitting into two, so I'm not really sure what's going on there, but there's basically two different versions of AutoGen, and the docs aren't the best, so I'm going to have to bump it down to a 6. As for the other ones, I'd say, yep, fairly customizable, fairly performance. Maybe I'd bump down customization by 1.
And I would agree. I would go even lower on developer experience. I would put it at maybe a 4 out of 10. I think that AutoGen's developer experience has really not been too pleasant. You can do a lot of things as the customization score shows, and I agree with that. But the developer experience really hasn't been great for me. I think that tinkering with it takes way too much time to get set up. From your API keys to actually rolling out your model, everything is just not the easiest to use.
Cool. Yeah, well, let's move on to the next one.
The next agentic framework I want to talk about is called Swarm. This actually comes from OpenAI, and it's an educational and experimental framework that was actually created originally simply to demonstrate how handoffs and routines work with ChatGPT. But if we look at some of the examples here, we can actually see you've got things like a personal shopper. So Swarm is basically going to allow you to be a personal shopper. So if we take a look at the actual Python file, what you'll see is that the user is going to give an amount and also what they're looking to purchase. And then what you're going to do is actually get similar products recommended to you. And we've got this user's purchase history and products database. We've got our refunds agent, our sales agent, and the triage agent, and they're all going to work together similarly to how Crew works together to create that crew of agents.
Yeah, so going on to ranking them, OpenAI, I think a bit biasly, performance 8 out of 10, customization 9 out of 10, developer experience 8 out of 10. I'm going to heavily agree with customization just because, as it even says itself, it's very lightweight, it's very experimental. I don't think there is that much you can do with it. Probably the same as performance. I'm going to bring that down even though I haven't used it that much. Then for developer experience, it's not like the other frameworks where they have tons of different examples out there. Even though I will say the code just...
Yeah, so I would agree with you there at the end. The code is easy to pick up in that sense, but the fact that you're stuck in the OpenAI ecosystem, and also the fact that, quite frankly, this is not an enterprise level or production level framework, means that you are going to suffer in performance and customization. It's using GPT in the back end, so of course it's not going to be terrible, but it has not been optimized to run at scale or in an enterprise level. So you have to be careful when you're using this for anything outside of proof of concept.
And just one more thing which I thought was quite interesting is that I saw OpenAI hiring for researchers that are looking to use multi-agent systems for reasoning. So it kind of feels like this framework isn't maybe meant to be a product, it's more meant for how do they reach AGI or how do they improve, LLM's reasoning ability, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I think a good example to make here is that OpenAI is a bit of a Swiss Army knife that's looking to do AGI stuff, whereas something like Crew is just a steak knife that can only cut steak, and it cuts steak very well.
Let's go on to the next one.
The next framework we wanted to talk with you guys about is called LangGraph. So LangGraph is an offshoot of LangChain, which is an LLM framework that I'm sure many of you have heard of. But LangGraph's specialty is getting really low level and allowing you to really customize your agentic workflows and build whatever the heck you want to build with them. So they do have templates that come out of the box, but because of the way that LangChain and LangGraph has been designed, you can actually go in there and take something like this code assistant example, and you've got your LangGraph code assistant from Mistral, as well as just a LangGraph code assistant. And here they're using Alpha Codium, and that's one of the beauties of LangChain and LangGraph is here they're using Alpha Codium as well as Mistral, but you could very easily change this to be OpenAI and whatever frameworks that you want to use. So that's the beauty of LangGraph, but that can also be the pain. And here we see how you might be able to build a coding assistant. You just have to set up your system prompt where you tell it that you're a coding assistant. And then you also need to create a model for what your code output is going to be. So that's where it can get a little more complicated because most of the agentic frameworks aren't going to make you do this. It's just something you can do if you want to. But for LangGraph, you actually need to define that base model class to tell it what the output's going to look like for your code generation. But you can see here, we ask for a function to calculate the nth Fibonacci number, and it prints out a function for us.
Yeah, so now let's go on to the ranking. And yeah, so ChatGPT gave it a performance 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 for customization, developer experience 7 out of 10. The main one I'm going to disagree with, again, is probably developer experience. I do think it's quite hard to learn at first, but I would say the customization does seem really high. Terry, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. Once again, I would say customization is actually a 10 out of 10, and performance might be a 9 out of 10, but developer experience is going to be maybe a 4 or 5. Just like AutoGen, the learning curve here is really difficult. Things like having to define your model before you run your agent are just layers of abstraction that not everyone's going to be comfortable with. So if you know what you're doing, LangGraph is great, but if you're just getting started, this isn't where I would start.
Okay, yeah. So basically, the next framework we're going to go over to is Camel. I'm going to reveal a bit of my bias because I have been working with them for the past year. So I'm going to try and recognize that as much as I can. And basically, where I think Camel really excels is with innovation and customization. So they actually were the first multi-agent system framework, but alongside this, they actually release a lot of research. So they have a few things. If you can go to the research tab, Terry, they've got something called Crab, Oasis, and some other things. And just for example, Oasis is actually where they put 1 million AI agents in a fake social media and have it simulate things. And then they have Crab, where they allow agents to use devices. So I think they got a lot of really interesting products. If we can go to the examples page in the GitHub, maybe we could show one of the cookbooks. Yeah, so basically now we're going to see some of the toolkits. As you can see here, highly customizable with a lot of tools. But if you actually go down to workforce, which is one of the agentic structures I talked about earlier, you can see some sort of examples where they're using multi-agent systems in different ways to rank hackathons or build games or build customer service Discord bots or even fine-tune and train models. So maybe we can go to the ranking now. And basically now we're going to go to the ChatGPT ranking. It gives performance 8 out of 10, customization 9 out of 10, developer experience 8 out of 10. I'm trying to not be biased, but I would say I do fully agree with that. Maybe customization, I'll go 10 out of 10, but what do you think, Terry?
I would say that I would actually bump up the performance because I think that Camel is very performant compared to other agentic frameworks. I think the customization score is fine, and then I would keep the developer experience at an 8 out of 10. I think these are fair scores from ChatGPT.
Okay, perfect. Now we've kind of got everything. I guess we're going to give some sort of conclusion, depending on what you're looking for, what framework you should go for. So maybe we go through one by one and be like, okay, what type of person would be using CrewAI? Because I do think they all have their own merits.
Yeah. So now that we've taken an in-depth look at all 5 frameworks, we want to take a bird's eye view and compare and contrast these frameworks to see which one is the best fit for your specific use case. So let's start with CrewAI. I think CrewAI is a great fit for you if you are a beginner to agentic frameworks and you're looking to build an agentic framework that is going to scale well as an agentic framework that you are able to clearly define with words. What do you think, Roman?
I agree with that. I think it's definitely the easiest one, and I think that is very clear through its documentation and even its content. I will give them massive props. I do think they're one of the best for marketing. They do great video content all over YouTube.
Awesome. And next, let's talk about AutoGen. So, AutoGen, I think, is going to be a great use case once again if you are on that enterprise level. And I think the way that AutoGen stands out compared to the other models is the fully autonomous system as well as the goal oriented system. So, you can really prioritize independent agents as opposed to collaboration or workflow integration. So, if that's what your use case is, that's where I think AutoGen will excel. And also, I think you have to have experience to use AutoGen successfully because the learning curve is a bit steep.
Sure.
What do you think, Roman?
I haven't used it as much. It wouldn't be my go-to one, so I haven't had too much to comment on this.
Gotcha. And then next up, we've got LangGraph. LangGraph is going to be the go-to framework if you are looking for that low-level customization and you're also looking to build a modular framework where you can chain those calls and iteration on top of themselves. So here, if you wanted to de-emphasize things like autonomy and collaboration and emphasize chaining and integration, I think LangGraph would be your best choice. What do you think, Roman?
I think that sounds pretty fair to me.
Awesome. So now let's talk about Swarm. We know that Swarm is an educational and experimental framework, and that is going to tie into the recommendation for who should use it. It is decentralized by design, so if you're working on something where you need to prioritize your agent collaboration and perhaps some creative solutions over those structured workflows, I think Swarm works, as well as if you're looking to build a quick, fast proof of concept and perhaps you have limited resources, I think Swarm is a great place to get started. What do you think, Roman?
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you're building a startup or some kind of product, I'd probably stay clear. But for these kind of use cases of experimentation, I think it's perfectly fine.
And then finally, we have CAMEL-AI. I also have a little bit of bias, as Roman mentioned. He works with it, and it's something that I've worked with in the past. And I think Camel is a really nice blend of being able to do everything. So you've got a really wonderful developer experience. It's probably, if not the most customizable, the second most customizable, and your performance is going to be really excellent. So for me, Camel is going to be great for anyone who's from enterprise level to startup level that is sort of in the middle. You're not a beginner, but you're also not an expert. You're looking to get your feet dirty. I think Camel would be a great choice for you.
I'll probably agree with that. I'd say Camel's really good as well for academia and research. I do know there's a lot of research projects going around Camel. But yeah, other than that, I have to thank everyone. If you think we missed any or you disagree with the scores, feel free to put them in the comments.